we realized that, well, this model is going to be hard to sustain in the long run just because cap rates were compressing. We just couldn't really make the deals make sense going forward. So we're like, well, do we take a break, wait for the market to change, or do we pivot a little bit, right? And that's why we pivoted into industrial.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Pros Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Johnson. Today, I am joined by someone that is a real-world operator who helps investors move from confusion to clarity. His name is Jens Nielsen. He's doing some really incredible things in the commercial space, especially with adjusting during market conditions. Jens, welcome in, man. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mike. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Me too. I think our listeners are really going to take something away from the story that you have of being in the commercial space and then making the arc as the market got a little bit different here these past few years. So why don't we get started there? Tell us a little about who you are, where you got started, and where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. So as people may notice from my accent and my name, I wasn't born in this country, but I came here almost 30 years ago, 1996, as a young man came here, did the typical, followed the career path of getting a corporate job and saving in my 401k, all the things that we expected to do. And then around like 10 years ago in my mid 40s, I was like, man, I got to do something different because I didn't want to work another 20 years for, the man. I had good jobs and, we did well, but it was just, making somebody else rich while I was getting my salary. So 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I started looking around and everything else just looked like another job until I stumbled on real estate. I was like, wow, here's an opportunity to put your money to work or my money to work while I'm sleeping, while I'm, on vacation, on the weekends. So that was kind of the shift of mindset then. And then we being my wife and I, started out like buying some small fourplexes and so on in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I live in New Mexico now, been living in the Southwest the last 20 years. Started investing there 10 years ago, and quickly saw like, wow, this is great, but you also run out of money, right? So you have to kind of start finding ways to partner with people. So, a few years in, we started doing some joint ventures. And then in 2019, 2020, that led into the apartment syndication world, right? As you remember back there in COVID 21, interest rates were, dropping like crazy. Money was so cheap. So and everybody was sitting in all these piles of cash. So everybody wanted to invest in real estate back then, right? I think in 21, we did nine syndicated deals in 1 year, right?
Okay.
Raised a
Wow.
lot of money, closed a lot of deals. But then, you know, as then the market started shifting in 22, 23, interest rates were going up, insurance rates were going up, and so on. We realized that, well, this model is going to be hard to sustain in the long run just because cap rates were compressing. We just couldn't really make the deals make sense going forward. So we're like, well, do we take a break, wait for the market to change, or do we pivot a little bit, right? And that's why we pivoted into industrial, and that's I think probably what I want to talk more about. So that was like very
Okay.
quick, 5 years in a flash. So what
Yeah.
what question showed up there?
Yeah, well, it's what I find interesting is what when you were making that transition into real estate, it sounds like you went directly to the multifamily world over that single family world. And that's a big difference for investors. There's some focus on one, some focus on the other. What was it about multifamily up front that interested you to go into?
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
Yes, I lived in a small mountain town in Colorado at that time, and there was no multifamily, well, very little multifamily there. And I started looking at single family in and around. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to buy, 50 single family houses and dealing with that, and I would have to travel. It's like this is not sustainable and scalable. And I didn't want to be an owner operator because I already had a full-time job and hobbies and stuff. I didn't want to be like the guy that would have to work with going, fix toilets and stuff. So it's like I need to become an investor. And one person really shifted my mindset early on was, hey, because what is it you want to do, right? Do you want a second job or do you want to be an investor? And I was like, no, I want to be an investor. And I couldn't really see the path of buying single family and that whole thing. So I went to Albuquerque, which was 4 hours away from where I was living, and connected with a broker there. And back then, 10 years ago, you could buy fourplexes too for 150, $200,000, right? I was like, why would I not buy that versus buying, single family houses at the same price? So that's kind of the thing. So I've never owned any single family rentals. I know people flip houses and do all these things, but multifamily it just started out that way and it worked.
And that's one thing I love about real estate is finding your niche, looking at which section works for you. Because some people I know in the industry, they like the flipping part. They actually enjoy that process. That's what does it for them just on that daily basis. Like you're saying, no one gets into real estate to have a job. And that's where most folks mess up, honestly, is they'll create a job for themselves because you're just doing what you think you should do. And what I really enjoy about how you went into it is you were thinking about it a little bit more. It wasn't just this quick jump. It was actually, how do I take one of the most powerful tools in America to change your financial life with and use it in a way that's effective for the life I actually want to live? Starting that from the beginning, it makes it way easier to stay out of the pitfalls I see a lot of folks fall into. Okay, so we're in multifamily. I know we're wanting to get to that part in the shift because I think it's super interesting part of the story. So you're in there, you've done some syndications, and then the market's doing great, and then all of a sudden there's a shift happen. What was going on in your mindset then and making that jump to a different asset class, for lack of a better purpose, inside commercial?
Yeah, and as leading up to that, right, I had left my corporate career. I had, we'd actually moved from Colorado back to New Mexico, and all these things, right? So a lot of things were changing in that. And I realized this was no longer a hobby, right? I had to continue to make money. At the same time, I started doing, coaching and consulting, which we can get into as well, because that was another stream of income. But I realized that, and this is probably one of these things about, syndications. You have to continue to do deal after deal to get acquisition fees and other things, right? And I was like, wait, this this is not going to work because these deals won't cash flow, and we're just betting on continuous, um rate, what do you call it, that the rentals will go up and so on, rent would go up, and that wasn't happening. So I had and this is I think a key thing for anybody listening. I'm very good at networking and connecting with people, right? So I would just meet people locally. I'd meet people in bigger pockets and through other things. And I ran into this guy. He was a local guy, and he's like, "Hey, I know you've been in apartments, but I've been investing in, industrial." When I say industrial, I'm talking about warehouses, not so much stores, more like flex space and so on. It's like I've been doing the apartments I don't really like, but I understand this space, but I'm not very good at raising money. So, Max and I, we decided to partner up and buy our first warehouse, which is coming up on 3 years in February. Bit of a class C, but we realized the cap rates were much higher, right? We can buy it at a 9-10 cap instead of a 5-6 cap, right? And the competition for the buyers is much lower. The demand in that city, that Albuquerque, was very high for industrial space because there's hardly any vacancies. Great price, and we saw the path there, so we did that first deal coming up on 3 years. Like, oh, this is actually interesting, and it's a lot less hands-on than an apartment building is, and so on.
Yeah. Now, when y'all are looking at a deal, or you can use that one in particular, for someone that's interested in this space, what is it that you see in a property that either makes it a deal or doesn't make it a deal for you?
If you're looking for consistent, high-quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency, it's the most sophisticated, data-driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
Yeah, so I mean, industrial is very, very different than apartments, right? In apartments, you pretty much, you have the T12. You can look at how that property has been performing, and you can kind of project out what it's going to look like. Um, on the industrial space, you got to worry about, but first of all, is there demand in the market, right? If you go to a Rust Belt city somewhere in the Northeast, there may be 1 million square feet of vacant warehouse space that you don't, so you can get it for a penny on the dollar, right? But do you want to buy that? Whereas in our town, it's landlocked from various reasons, so there's not a lot of new construction. Yeah, they'll build the Amazon, 400,000 square feet out in the desert, but we can't touch that. So there's limited supply, so good demand, right? So that's one thing. And then understand, in an apartment building, your tenants will pay their own utilities, hopefully, but you as the owner have to pay taxes and insurance and maintenance and all these things. In industrial, if it's structured correctly, you'll do what's called a triple net. So your tenant will pay taxes, insurance, repairs, and maintenance, which really insulates you as the owner, because what if taxes double? What if insurance triple? Well, the tenant has to pay those things, right? So it really ensures you that you can make a very predictable return calculations, right? And typically leases are 3, 4, 5 years. So you can also create a predictable return calculation. Now, the risk is, you know, we have one warehouse, we have one tenant in there. If that company moves out, we have 100% vacancy, right, for 30,000 square feet. So you have to look at that side as well. So those are some of the key things there, and I'm happy to dive into specifics.
Yeah, jump into a little more depth on that triple net lease for someone that isn't familiar with that just heard you say it for the first time. Because one, you're absolutely right, how it insulates you when your numbers aren't affected by those numbers anymore, the asset itself becomes much different for you, and the way that you can go about it changes. So dig into that a little bit so someone can understand, okay, that's what that really means when I hear that term.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk you through. So we closed a deal about a year ago, December of 2024, 30, little over 30,000 square feet. The seller was vacating. He was going out of business, so he's vacating the space, right? So we bought the space vacant. This takes on a lot of risk because, you got to find a tenant. So bought it vacant. We upgraded, had an office in the front. So we renovated the office. We renovated, you know,
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
The building did some painting and some insulation, some stuff. So we did some upgrades to it. And then we had our brokers market the space. And within 3 or 4 months, they found a national tenant in telecommunication. They basically do, install cables and stuff like that, right? So they needed a lot of space for all their trucks and cables and stuff like that, right? So we negotiated a 4-year lease with them. So a 4-year lease with a base rate. And in commercial, you look at the way you calculate the rents are based upon per square foot per year. Like, so 10, 12, 14, $15 per square foot per year. That's how those are calculated. It's not so much by, one apartment and so many dollars per month. It's per square foot per year. That's the base rent. Plus we have I think it's a 3% escalator. So every year the rent will go up by 3% for those 4-year contract
That's
or
already
lease
built in out of the
already
gate.
built in.
Already built
Yeah.
in. Wow. So you know for sure for 4 years, this price change is going to take place. You can factor it into your numbers. That's powerful.
Yeah. So that's the base rent, right? I think it's $25,000 a month or whatever they pay. And then you have the triple net piece on top, right? So that's the insurance, taxes, and kind of repairs and maintenance. So they pay us that. But for example, like many places, when a building changes hands, taxes goes up. So taxes literally doubled. So next year, when the lease comes up, we're going to say, hey, well, taxes doubled. Your monthly triple net payment now is going to go up by X, right? Um, Insurance stayed the same, so that was lucky. But they pay their own utilities. They pay all the utilities and so on. So literally, the only expenses that we have every month, if we got to pay our debt, of course, and we have to pay the taxes up front and bill them back. But it's so predictable, and that thing is, cash flowing 10, 12%, cash on cash and so on, right?
Predictable, I think, is the most powerful word there. When you have a document like that, especially with those kind of tenants, because now you're not looking for a single family residential tenant. You're not looking for someone to live in one of your apartments. You are looking for a business that's going to stay, hopefully long term, and will even set up leases that way out of the gate. That's provides a lot of predictability in your business.
Yeah. Now the risk is, in 4 years, they have a contract with the city to do all this telecommunication work. If that contract expires and they leave, then we have a vacant building potentially, right? So, you have to build in that. So as we are building up reserves, me and my partners, like we got to have at least a year of expenses so we can survive a year of debt payments and insurance and taxes if the property goes vacant. We don't need it today, but we need to build that up, right? Because that is the risk. And I think, it's tempting to just distribute all the money and then it's like, oh crap, now we have a problem, right? So that's the counterpoint to the ease is, can you find a tenant that can fit, that wants that space?
Wants that space. Now, as that lease is coming to a close, is there any preemptive tenant research that y'all are doing? How much time would you know beforehand that they're not going to renew?
That's a good question. It's probably written into the lease. I don't know. I mean, we would go, probably 6 months before. It's like, okay, do you guys want to renew? And we start negotiating that renewal. It's in the lease how many months that is. I don't know what it is. I would have to look, right? But yeah, you want to start, and if they say no, we're leaving, you got to, probably 6 months out, start advertising the space.
You got time. And where do you advertise that space at? Where are you going to find these tenants?
So we use brokers. We use commercial brokers for that, right? That are specialized in leasing commercial properties. And here's something else to learn there is that I did not know that, but let's say, we sign a lease that is, $100,000 a year. It's more than that. There's a round number for 4 years. So that's $400,000 in rent that they're going to pay us. The broker takes, I think it's 6% of that upfront. So you have to pay them $60,000, or sorry, yeah, $60,000 a year. Not a 60, that'll be six, whatever the number is. But 6% of the gross rent, they have to pay that upfront when the lease is signed. So they get their commission, and you hope that the tenant will pay the next 4 years and not go out of business, right? So that's
Interesting. So you're paying commission on the total lease amount for the 4 years up front to that broker. That's good to know just going into it, that that's going to be one of those line items. Cause if you didn't know that, 60 grand out of the wrong place, man, that can make you not feel great.
exactly. Yeah. So that's something to really pay attention. So you either have to raise that money now. Assuming the tenant stays in there for 4 years, you don't have to worry. But we've had the first one we did 3 years ago, that property has like 7 different suites. And we had some tenants in there that really struggled, and they went out of business. Well, if they're out of business, there's no more money to come for, but you've still paid your commission to the broker up front, right? So that can be challenging if you got to replace your tenants earlier than planned. That can be an expensive proposition.
Yeah, it's if you're not planning on that for sure, because tenant selection, that's where it says super important. Is there anything that you've noticed so far that y'all shy away from? Like, I don't want to that kind of business I don't want to put in. I know there's zoning regulations, there's all kinds of little nuances that determine it, but have y'all found any that you'd warn someone, hey, be careful with this one, it doesn't seem to last?
Yeah, I mean, so New Mexico allowed cannabis residential, what do you call it? Just, it was cannabis a few years ago. So everybody wanted to grow cannabis and get into that business. So in that other property I talked about, we had a few cannabis. It's like they'll pay a lot of rent because, not everybody wants them. It's like, oh, let's try this. And we had 2 or 3 of them that basically they couldn't make and they went out of business, right? So I would be very careful about, depending what state you're in, like taking cannabis operators we've learned to be a risky proposition, right?
Interesting. Kind of be careful of a trendy business, quote unquote, almost like something that it goes back more into the homework of make sure one, it's lasting. Cause look at the tenant you got, a national tenant. That has some lasting ability to it. So when you're thinking about who you're going to put in your building, how much credibility do they really have to determine, can they even make this, right? How much you take a risk on someone's business and you really don't know if they're good at it. You're literally putting your livelihood in their hands to say, all right, here, try this. And you've been in this a long time. We were talking a little beforehand. You do some coaching as well, where business isn't easy. It takes a strong mind to do this and deal with it on a daily basis because there's so much uncertainty involved. How do you help folks in that realm? What have you learned through your journey and things they could pay attention to they might need to overcome?
Yeah, and as you were saying, I was like, man, I should have gone in and actually really examined their business plans and stuff like that, and spoken to them beforehand, right? Because they were not really business owners. They just jumped on the bandwagon of wanting to, grow cannabis without really knowing, right? So so basically, I've learned a lot of stuff through, these 10 years of being in this business. And so real estate is one thing, right? Because most people think, oh, I just raise the money and I buy a building and I put a property manager in there and everything is good to go, right? Well, you and I both know that there's still daily management of the manager. There's asset management, all these things. So if you don't have first of all, the right mindset, the right systems in place, the right partners, you can very quickly run into trouble. We've had some difficult partnerships too. So that's the thing. But then as I started to learn, but I started realizing that most people don't fail because of their technical skills and their knowledge. They fail because they don't have the right either productivity or the right mindset, or it's not really important enough. And when things get hard for them, they just kind of like, I don't want to do it, and they just kind of flush out, right? So I've been working with a lot of clients to help them build the right mindset and approach towards this outcome that they want, right? Maybe it's real estate investing, maybe it's just small businesses. And the other thing I really learned is a lot of people, they're a good technician, they're a good electrician or plumber or baker, and they start a business, but they really just start a job. They just buy themselves a job. They never create a business, right? So that's what I like to work with people. Like, let's create a business. If it's real estate, if it's something else, make sure you put all the systems in place, hire people, document everything so that you actually have a business versus just a job, right?
That's powerful, man, because so many people get caught up in that trap. They have that entrepreneurial spirit and they're willing to do the hard things. You said that a second ago about when it gets hard. If you aren't mentally prepared for when it gets hard, and it's always going to get hard, if you don't care about what you're doing enough, you will not keep going. And it is not by accident that you actually care about what you're doing. And that's you find people in the entrepreneurial space where they do run their jobs, quote, business for years, and they have that, and then stepping inside and showing them, hey, you just need these few systems, right? Because that's what we don't come with the knowledge of, is the nuts and bolts part of how to separate yourself out. When you're first starting with a client that's in that place, what are you trying to show them to introduce them to the idea of systems and processes?
Yeah, I mean, we go through and look at, so I have a client locally. She has a small bakery, and she was just in there baking. She makes cookies and cakes and wonderful products. But she was like in there every single day, like making the dough and baking the cookies and cleaning the stuff and serving the front desk and stuff like that. I was like, okay, what are some things that what is the easiest thing you can document here? Right? It's like, okay, I can document how to make the cookies. Here's the recipe, here's the pictures. So within a few weeks, he documented that and hired some people that can make the cookies so that he could step up and do the more complicated things, right? So basically, what are the simple repeatable tasks that you can get off your plate, right? That's the biggest thing. Right? Sometimes, we get stuck in, well, they can't do it as good as I can, or what if they screw up, or whatever. Say, well, that is part of running a business, right? If you can't let go of some control, you're never going to have a business. You're just going to have a job.
I think that's the most powerful point you just made too, because if you can, I'm thinking about your baker, like that's what she started her business to do, was to bake, was to actually make the cookie part. And you're asking her to give away the thing that, quote, validated her in what she was doing to take that next step. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with also, is the thing that got you into it is actually the part you have to give away if you want to level up out of it. And it takes massive amounts of trust, and you're going to hire the wrong people, and you're going to have to learn. And it's just part of it. And it's, how do you introduce them to that new mindset of here's what you need to be thinking about now, since you're not doing the production work anymore?
Yeah. So the thing is, most people, you know, most people they have to experience a certain level of pain first. They have
Mm.
to feel the pain, right? You don't, most people, when Molly started, like, he's excited, he has a business, he's doing the baking, but 6 months into it, he's like, oh my God, all I'm doing is baking and working, right? So it took a while for the pain to build up enough to the point where people are willing to make a change, right? You have to focus on that, right? And then it's like, hey, Molly, is this what you want? Do you want to continue to work here every single day to run this and make, a decent living, but not an amazing living? And as soon as you go on vacation or do anything, the business goes away, right? Because there is not a business, there is a job. So, um, what is the real outcome you want there, right? And so you had financial outcomes you wanted. So you wanted even maybe a franchising model. See, likes to travel with a husband and things like that, right? So it's like, okay, in order to do that, this is the path you need to take to get there. Yeah, it'll take some time, but let's work through. Let's start with the end in mind. Like, what are you trying to create here? And let's work backwards and say, what are the things that are most important to get off your plate right now so that you can work on the business, not just in the business.
That's powerful. Knowing where you're trying to go and working backwards. It's like Charlie Munger, always invert. Always invert. Start at the end and work back this way. Know what you want and what you don't want, so then you can build your whole plan to get to where you actually want to be. And I think it's fascinating what you were describing for her, where she took a passion, monetized it. That's like the first step into the entrepreneurial journey where, all right, now I'm doing this thing, and you can easily get stuck in, I just keep doing this and it will create that. But you're not going to get there by accident. It doesn't happen by accident. There are particular steps, and shining the light on those is what makes that click. And you nailed it on the head. It's that pain. Nobody, there's no reason to change if it doesn't hurt bad enough. Like, why would you do that? That doesn't make sense. If everything's good and you just change stuff, I'm pretty sure there's like a diagnosis for that. That's not a good thing to do all the time. So it's definitely that. And I think we all have different thresholds, some to our not good benefits. Where do those customers normally come from for you in the coaching world? So it sounds like you coach not just real estate, other industries too.
Yeah, I mean, it's, they come from local meetups. I run a meetup where I live. I go to different events. It come from me going to, I'm not out there advertising and have a bunch of marketing going on, right? Because I want to create genuine connection with people, and they're not buying widgets, right? I'm not selling $20
Mhm.
widgets to somebody, but I need a million people. I need people to know, like, and trust me, and then, be interested in buying my services. So it takes it takes a lot of effort to convert potentials into clients, but then they tend to stay with me for a long time because I get to know them and we have a good fit. So as I said, they come from people I meet locally. Then I get on a podcast and I talk to people like you, and I get my word out there, right? So, and I did a lot of real estate mentoring too in the early days when everybody was buying. 5 years ago, on Bigger Pockets, I would meet people. It's interesting, and it's really slowed down. Not so many people are trying to get into it anymore, but I still, find the occasional person that wants to buy real estate that way as well.
Now, you've mentioned networking and getting out and making connections a few times here. Was that something you did previous in the past life before real estate? Were you always that way, or was it something you embraced heavily once you got in?
Mike, I mean, obviously in the IT career, I would be saying I would go to conferences and stuff like that, and I always hated it because, like, oh, I don't want to be around all these nerds like myself, right? I didn't see the purpose of it until I realized, oh my God, if you want to expand your network, you have to get out and among people, right? So early on, I signed up for kind of one of those mentoring programs. And I would go to events and I would start meeting people. Had I not done that, I would not have met, most of my partners and had the growth that I had, right? So we got to get out behind the the computer we sit behind. Like, you got to get out there in the real world and meet people, and that's super important. So I still love to go to events. We've run an event in Denver for a few years. Now we run like a small entrepreneurial intensive event here in Santa Fe once a year, right? So we gotta get the right people in the room to make stuff happen.
I think you nailed it, because that is what I've learned in my career in real estate is it is a relationship business. If you want to have sticking power, make sure you put people in your phone that will help you have sticking power. That's one thing my mentor is really big on is put people in your phone that you can't get their phone number 30 years from now. And you get that now, right? You grow together. That's what you're doing. And as you elevate your career, and he was in commercial real estate in New York, he was actually leased to large corporations. That's what he did. Had a really fabulous career there. And he's very big on if you just stay home, you're not going to get anywhere if you want to do big things. And nobody does big things alone. Jens, man, I really appreciate this conversation. If someone wants to get a hold of you, reach out to you, touch base, what's the best way to find you?
I'm a little old school. I mean, I love just people go to my website, jensnielsen.us. You put that in the show notes and go on there. They can book a free call there. And there's also an ebook that's more on the mentoring side of the building your vision. There's an ebook people can download there. I also have an ebook around how to systematize your business. I just created that one. They can also get
Nice.
so on. So yeah, that's how my phone number is on there. People can call, text, or email me because I just love to connect with people. And if you've got a real estate challenge or a personal growth challenge or business challenge, reach out and let's see if there's a way we can collaborate.
Powerful, man. Powerful. We'll make sure those links are in the notes for y'all to click on. Well, Jens, I really appreciate your time, your story, and your perspective, man. And I think we need more people in the space doing it like you're doing it, having that go-giver mentality, showing folks along the way what it takes and proving it yourself. So we got more conversations coming up with people like Yin. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like this podcast, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.